What is up, everybody? This is Jake with the Evolve Your Fitness podcast. Back after a long break. The Open and quarterfinals and life in general kind of kept me from getting on here. And today I have minimal prep, but I decided to sit down and make sure I got one out there. I'm going to try to be better about staying consistent on this, right? So today I'm here to talk to you about the Open and quarterfinals and just do like a recap from an affiliate owner's perspective and just from how our gym did as a whole and just my thoughts on it. We'll see where it goes. I don't have any like I said, I didn't prep a whole lot for this, so we'll see where it goes. We'll start off with the Open, obviously, because that's where it all starts. I am probably one of the few people that's in the opinion that I don't know. I was fairly happy with the Open, with how they did the tests, everything like that. There's a few minor tweaks I think you could make to make it a little bit better, but I also understand that every year they're trying to evolve. They're looking at CrossFit HQ is looking at numbers that I don't see, and they're trying to evolve. And a lot of times we give them a hard time for not changing, but then when they do change and it's not that great, kind of tear their head off. So, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't as terrible, I don't think, for your average person. And it doesn't really matter for the high level athletes. They're going to make it on to the next stage. In fact, even for most of the people in the top 25%, it doesn't make a huge difference on the test. But if you look at it as an overall ranking worldwide, how it turns out, and that's your base level of fitness, that's the only one where it might get a little funky, but it's really hard with a 3-week test anyways to have it perfect and show a complete picture of your fitness, right? So first up, Open workout number 1. This would be the one with all the wall balls, the box jumps, the box step overs, and then more wall balls, more box step overs, more box jumps. Well, not a lot of people got to the more box step overs and more box jumps, but as a gym, this was our worst as a whole Open finish. That could be due to a couple things. One, I think standards across the world maybe not at the level that we hold them, which is fine. And actually, that I'm proud of that either way. I wouldn't want us to have false scores in any way, shape, or form. Two, we might have a slight deficit in just pure work capacity and tons of squatting. I tend to be pretty reserved on how many squats we put in per week. I'm not a big fan of people having, patella tendonitis and problem with their knees. To me, that goes against the very grain of what we're trying to do here in the gym. We're not a competitive gym. That's not the whole point of what we're doing here. We want people to feel good outside of here. And if your knees always hurt because of all the squatting you've been doing, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot outside of here. And that's not very fun. And so that's kind of a hill I die on. Now, could I probably increase volume a little bit more? Probably for sure. That's contradicting terms, but we'll get better at it. I did not foresee, what was it, like 266 wall balls in an Open workout on my bingo card. I kind of thought 150 was really high for your average person, but I was wrong. Also, just the raw work capacity. I talked to a friend about this. I don't want us to be bad at anything. So I don't care if people are like, well, it's low skill and it's just breathing and it's just throwing a ball and all that. So what? I want our gym to crush those workouts too. I think that's as important as doing the high skill stuff, just showing like, hey, I can outwork you here and I'm going to outskill you over there, or I'm going to outlift you over there. So that's a thing I struggle with in figuring out, the management of the volume, making sure people feel good and making sure they're successful in all different types of workouts. So that's kind of how that went. I did think it was really interesting that Colton Mertens and Miriam Von Rohr were both the winners. They're both shorter people. It's really impressive thing in our sport right now where we've gotten to a point where the short people can wall ball faster than the tall people and really crush it. I just think that's really unique. And um, in a regular gym setting, that's not how it works, right? The shorter person usually gets annihilated by the wall ball, unless there's they have a huge fitness gap on other people. But those two are so good that they managed to overcome those deficits and actually turn it into a strength for them, which is just absolutely wild. So that's a cool thing. I also think that's just a good lesson to learn for anybody, that things that you think can be a deficit can actually turn out to be a strength if you view it the correct way and work at it, right? Um, Workout number 2 was the ring muscle up workout and the progressive pull-ups, right? I thought this workout was pretty good. I'm not a huge fan of like the getting progressively harder style of things, but I understand why they need to do it in the open so people can continue to play. This was by far our best finish as a gym as a whole. Whether that's and that was across both like people with high skills that have muscle ups. Like it wasn't like just the muscle up saved us, but also for people who'd only had a pull up or only had a chest to bar. So apparently we're really good at upper body pulling. We're also pretty good at dumbbell snatching. I like to do a lot of dumbbell snatches. We'll do them at different weights. So 50 pounds for men and 35 for women happens to be on the lighter end of the spectrum for us. And we also do a lot of lunging and a lot of single leg stuff. So I think all that just kind of came into play for this to be a super wheelhouse workout for us. And I'm really proud of how well everybody did on that. As a whole, I think, one thing I think that we have to figure out is in the CrossFit sphere is how to have a better standard for ring muscle ups. I think there's a real big problem with lockout on muscle ups. The fadeaway lockout is a real problem, and especially on something where that's kind of dense, where it's 20 in a row. If you're not fully locking that out, that movement is so much easier. It increases your rep speed, so you can do more in a shorter amount of time. And also, for a lot of people, this became an actual like a gymnastics strength workout. Like they weren't strong enough anymore to lock out, to both pull yourself up high enough, catch, and then lock yourself out in the dip. And I also think that's really cool and really unique. A lot of times we talk about strength and everybody thinks barbell's the only way to test strength, but testing your lockout strength, your ability to pull high on the ring muscle up is a whole nother way to do it. So I think that was super unique and pretty cool. And man, oh man, could some of those high level athletes just rip through that and do them crazy fast. It's really wild what kind of levels we're getting people to these days. Trying to think if I had any other thoughts on that. I guess while we perform very well on that workout, I still want to continue to push our gym forward into more muscle ups. I even texted a friend of mine that we're going to add at a minimum 10 people doing new muscle ups this year, whether that's bar or rings, each one, so like if a person has 0 muscle ups, if they can get by the end of the year a ring muscle up and a bar muscle up, I count that as 2. So that's what I would like to see. I'm going to try to keep pushing that forward. As I said in the yearly recap video, that's definitely going to be a focus of ours this year. That's why we're doing a lot of dips, focusing on that. Number 3, this would be the burpee over the bar, power clean thruster workout. This was our middle of the pack workout. Once again, it's a lot of work capacity, a lot of burpees. The women tended to fare better than our men on this. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's because the scaling, a lot of times we'll do like 85 pounds for 115, and that was 85 pounds is what they use for 135. So generally we scale it a little heavier for the women, and maybe the fact that we do that made it feel pretty easy for our ladies, but we tended to do pretty decent on this. Once again, it's kind of a raw work capacity. There's with a kind of a big emphasis on burpees though. Um, I don't think the power cleans was much of a struggle for us, but the thrusters tended to slow some people down. So that's just something to, once again, squatting. I thought this workout was pretty good. The only thing on this one is I think it could have been a touch heavier. And I think if it was just a little bit heavier, we we could say we tested strength in the open and it would have been a little bit more complete test. So, but I don't even know how much heavier you would need to finish. Um, maybe you get to the 135, 95 bar a little bit sooner, and then you finish at like a 165, 115 bar at the end, something like that. Something as simple as that, I think could really, for most people, for 90% of people or 95% of people, would test strength a little more than they did in this variation. Granted, the strong people were ripped through this workout. So sometimes I struggle with that because it's while I say, well, it's not that heavy, no, I didn't move as fast as any games athlete, whether it was the barbell or the burpees. Those guys just crush it. So it's an interesting concept how exactly we test strength, and I don't think we've quite got it figured out quite yet. We tend to think it's got to stop people in their tracks if it's going to test strength, but does it have to? I don't know. We'll cover that more in the quarterfinals workout in a little bit, but I think there's some interesting things to look at on that. Overall, I think we did great as a gym. This is going to be a common theme, but I wish that there was like a mandatory owners have to be present for all open workouts and quarterfinals workouts for that matter. I think they would tighten down on our standards across the board for gyms around the world, because you have to put your stamp on that, your personal stamp, and you say like I do believe these to be correct. Back in the day, they used to, what was it, Josh Golden? If somebody had some, he wasn't even cheating. He just had bad standards. And I think they removed that gym's ability to validate workouts for an entire year, which is like wild. I don't think that there was anything nefarious about it. They didn't mean to, and they still got penalized heavier than we've ever seen before. But that was back in the day when, I think everybody thought that we just had a different outlook on things. Now we're looking more participation based, and we're afraid that would ostracize somebody, which probably does. I don't, not being able to validate workouts for an entire year, and all your athletes having to go to another gym to do it is pretty wild. But I do think that it is important for the owners to be there and put their personal stamp on it and be walking around. I try to make sure that I'm never personally judging. I'm doing the head judging. So that way I can watch everybody. Because if I'm watching one person, I can only ensure that the standards are happening correctly for that one person. And if there's 8 other people in the room doing the workout, who knows what's going on there? Do I have confidence in my people's ability? For sure. But I don't want to put them in a spot where they have no backup, right? They should always have backup from the owner, and the buck stops with the owner. When you're just focusing on one person, you can't back them up. You can't be that head judge. And if there's something that they might not see quite correctly, you can't come there and correct them either, because you're too busy focused on that one person. So that's how I do it. I wish more gyms did it that way, but whatever. I'm trying to think of any other points for the open. Anything that I feel like we need to, I feel like we could really work on some squat tolerance. and it's funny because that's a huge hole for myself as well. Um, Everything else, it's hard to tell. Our dumbbell snatches and our muscle ups and our pull ups seem to be pretty good, and sorry, we're going to continue to keep things that way. I like that. I'm pretty proud of that. So, anyways, moving on to the quarterfinals. We had 13 people qualify for the quarterfinals, and I think 10 of them signed up. It was a lot of fun. People did really well, put themselves out there, took on a little bit harder workouts. So looking at the workouts as a whole, our the first workout, which was our shuttle run overhead squat workout, tended to be a pretty solid middle of the pack to upper end of middle of the pack for our scores. And I'm pretty proud of that because that was a little more raw work capacity. There was no super limiting skill or weight in there. And so if we can do pretty well on that sort of thing, it means we're doing all right. Granted, it was a sprint, so it was still biased towards a specific type of athlete. And obviously with any workouts, it's always movement dependent, whether you're good at it or not. But we did pretty well on that one as a whole. Surprisingly, number 4, which is our handstand push-up workout, was our lowest score for our higher level athletes, and middle of the pack for our low level athletes. We are, it was middle of the pack for I wouldn't say our lower level athletes, but middle of the pack for our middle of the pack level athletes. If people could get a handstand push-up, it separated them, and we really focus on people being strong, which has allowed a lot of people to get a handstand push-up, and it made a big difference for them. Now, for our higher level athletes, where we struggled is just getting to the handstand push-ups fast enough. Our rowing maybe isn't quite as quick as it should be, and that's something that I plan on improving this year. So everybody can look forward to that, because some of these people are just doesn't matter how fast you do the handstand push-ups, we weren't getting to them fast enough. So that's just an interesting thing I noticed. Some of these people they can row really fast, do clean and jerks really fast after rowing really fast, and then row again really fast. And it's wild. I know, like, a lot of the high level athletes were getting off or done with their handstand push-ups faster than, say, like me, Ashley, or Kyle were even getting off the rower. And granted, for some of them, that 30 handstand push-ups is only a minute or something like that. But in a workout where it's just 2,000 meters of rowing and 30 clean and jerks, a minute is a really long time to still be fast in somebody. And I think one of the top scores is like 9 minutes and 30 seconds, which I think is close to 2 minutes faster than I got off that row and got to the handstand push-ups. And that's wild. And it was eye-opening. It was something to think about. Once again, going back to that raw work capacity, and just ability to stay moving for a long time and sit in the suffering, right? We tend to be really good at skills at our gym, and we're pretty good at raw work capacity, but we could probably improve. Let's see here. Number 3, and then all the workouts in the quarterfinals were, except for number 1, was kind of skill limiting, right? So you had the strict handstand push-up was a skill limiter. You had the bar muscle up was a skill limiter, and you had a deadlift weight that was a weight limiter. But so all of our athletes who did that kind of flourished in different areas depending on what was in their wheelhouse and what wasn't in their wheelhouse, and that's pretty normal. That's why I thought the fact that we did pretty decent on number one, which wasn't really limiting in any way other than speed and pain. Um, I thought that was pretty cool. But so everybody kind of bounced around. There's definitely outliers on each workout based on what their strengths and weaknesses were. Number three, I think could have finished a little bit heavier. That's the deadlift workout. So he did 3 rounds of 50 double unders, 10 deadlifts at 225, 2 rounds at 50 double unders, 10 deadlifts 275, and 1 round at 50 double unders and 10 deadlifts at 315. And I think the women's weights were like 155, 185, and 225, 215. I can't remember exactly right now. I think this could have finished a little bit heavier to make a little bit more of a strength test, and by a little bit heavier, I just mean like finishing at 365, and what that for women, that'd be like 245, something like that. And then maybe like reducing the rounds down, maybe like a 2-2-1-1, something like that. And then I think another thing they could do, and this would actually be across the board on a lot of different things, they could scale a little bit more like earlier. So instead of, I forget when they started scaling the weights. I think they didn't scale the weights until 55. I think they could have started scaling at 45 then. So still finish the 45-year-olds at 45 to 49. Still finish them at 315, 225. And but for the younger athletes and then the 2 lower age group athletes, from 35 until 44, finish them at like 365. But you could also make an argument that those high level athletes, some of them are finishing below 4 minutes, which once again will, standards come into play some, but they 4 minutes is insane. I'm not strong enough to rip that bar that quick. So strength comes into play and how fast you can move the bar and how tired you get while moving the bar. And then fitness is also tested as well. So, I say that, but I don't like to be a complainer about the tests. Like I want to win everything. Bad tests, good tests, I want to win them all. And I want my people to win them all. And so while I think that could have been an improvement, we could also just improve as well, right? As far as my like overall thoughts on quarterfinals go, I think I thought they were pretty good. I think they're still adjusting, and some small tweaks will fix things. Sorry, I got to send off a text really quick. I think some small tweaks could be made, but I'm sure they are adjusting things. I would have liked it if instead of releasing the workouts on Monday and giving us until Thursday at 2 or whatever it was to start them, I wish they would have released them on Friday, and then we could start them on Monday morning, or they would have to figure out the time zone things. But it would be nice to be able to work them into your class programming throughout the week. We did that one day. We did it on Friday, and it worked out really well. And I think it makes it, especially if you're including 25%, I think that would just make it more approachable for all athletes all around. But I mean, that's just a personal thing. I'm sure they have their own reasons for why they do things. So I hate to be, only look at it from one perspective. I think that's a little bit of a problem in the space. A lot of people only look at it from their own perspective, and they're not looking at the big picture as a whole. And it creates a lot of complaining. I like that they have large amounts of semifinals athletes moving on. I think the numbers could be adjusted for different age groups a little bit more, but as a whole, it's nice that they have more athletes moving on because they bring a large percentage to the quarterfinals, 25%. They don't increase the difficulty and skill that terribly much. It it's nice that they have a next level, and it gives people who have been working really hard for a really long time a chance to do the next big thing. Um, and also it helps these well, I would say this, but it helps some of these competitions fill up their rosters and gives people a chance to compete at a higher level. Granted, right now we're having a problem with some of these competitions filling up their rosters. Um, but I think as a whole, it could eventually bring in more people, give each competition more of a regional like feel, and also give these, I don't know if you call it like mid-level athletes, mid-high level athletes, a chance to go compete at a big competitions, feel like they're still involved in the season, um, and make it far and get to complex workouts, without spoiling the whole thing. Back in the days when they just did a 5-week open and then he qualified straight to regionals, there was a lot of really good athletes that were just left out in the cold. They had nothing to do. They had to find a local competition to do if they wanted to, and it was a big gap in the fitness space for people who are trying to make it to the next level and competitions that are appropriate for them. Granted, there was like later on there became bigger competitions like Wadapalooza's RX division is, um, a lot of people wouldn't say it's not RX. It's a very challenging competition. Same thing with Granite Games. They used to have an RX division. But I can't remember if the RX division did the exact same workouts or not, but um, it, it's just a little bit of a gap, and it gives people another chance to compete and reach a higher level. So I think that's very cool. Um, I think that's what we need to create more fans of the sport and more people in the sport. It also is nice to have the carrots for people to move towards. Now, granted, like I said, I know a lot of people have complaints about the workouts in the open and the workouts in the quarterfinals. And I'm sure CrossFit has things that they put it out, they watched how it played out, and they were like, damn, we missed that one. We'll get better next time. But they're adjusting it. They're trying to make sure that they're making as many raving fans of CrossFit and of, I guess, competition style CrossFit as well as they can, without also ostracizing the high level athletes. And I think for the high level athletes, quarterfinals, I got to see a lot of these athletes have almost a relaxed approach to it. And I think that's good. I don't think they can be stressed out for the open and then quarterfinals and then have to deal with semifinals and then they have to deal with the games. I think that makes it really hard. And it's good to see that they get to have a fun time, take a relaxed approach. I know like the Boys Interrupted did workout number 2, which was the choose your own adventure bar muscle up hang squat dumbbell hang squat clean workout. They all drew out of a hat different rep schemes to do and did the workout, and they didn't have to be super stressed out about it because the numbers that were going on to semifinals was enough that they knew they weren't going to miss it. And to be honest, all those guys, even with doing that relaxed approach, all still finished really close to each other, and all had awesome times. So I think that's good for them, keep them from getting burnt out, but also giving them the high level competition of semifinals that they want. I'm sure there's arguments to be made that it might not properly sort everybody. And of course they have an easy time because they're already getting invites to semifinals. What about the people just underneath of them? And that's tough. It's tough to make everybody happy, but overall, I think this is a cool new format. Yeah, like I said, I've said this before, but I would like a marriage of the quarterfinals and the Community Cup in some way, shape, or form. At least release the workouts early on so that we can, if they do workouts like this, which we saw, you could totally do them in a class. They weren't anything crazy. Release them on a Friday so then we can work them into the class. And not everybody will submit scores, but everybody can do them. And that makes affiliate owners happy too, because it's a lot less logistics. It's a lot easier on them. And yeah. Anyways, I don't know. That's all I got for today. I'm a little rusty. I can feel a lot of ums, but we'll keep on keeping on, I guess. Anyways, you guys have a good day. Thanks for listening. And remember, more protein, less bullshit. Thanks.